Databases. So we are getting into database now, and this is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, which is the environment we'll be using to be executing all our database implementations. So we'll go ahead and create a database now, and this language we're using is called the SQL language, SQL query language. So basically, to start a database, there are many ways to do it, but I'll recommend writing code, which is create database. What should we name that? Um, Journey. We can give it any name. Journey to full stack, right? So let's create that. Execute. It says command completed successfully. Now let's refresh the list of databases, see if we have it. So here we have our database, right? So now to have access to this database, what we'll do is I will just use the word use journey to full stack. So that way, whatever query we write is what it will be, communicating with this database itself. So under that, we can create table. Let's create an employee table, something like create table employee. And of course, employee will have employee ID, which is an integer data type, and we want to make that as identity, which means that to automatically generate. I'll explain that as we proceed. And then we also want to make sure that is the primary key. So primary key is basically the key that actually proves to be unique and also serves as a unique identifier for every rows. And employee name as well. First name, which will be the varchar. Varchar is more like a string integer, string data type in C# varchar. We want to give that like 30, limit of 30. So we also want to have last name. Of course, varchar itself, 30. And of course, employee will have salary, right? Which will be an integer data type. So that way, we've created the table. Let's see, why are we having this squidgy line? Okay, varchar 30, primary. Okay, primary key. Okay, so let's run that. So apparently we've created our table, right? So let's refresh this journey to full stack itself, go under the list of tables. Now we have the employee table there. So if we query this table now, if I have something like select all from employee and I run that, now we have it, but there's nothing there. Now how do we populate this? How do we populate data into this employee table? So what we'll do is we'll need to insert into the table by using the SQL insert query. Insert into employee. Then of course we'll actually determine the expected input in the employee, right? So the ID will be like employee ID. We have employee ID. We have first name. We have last name, and we have salary, right? So these are the things that these are the parameters that the employee table are expecting. So also we need to input the values. So the values that will be inserted into all these values will be ID. Let's start from 1. First name, let's call that Mary. Last name, Let's call that Johnson. And salary, let's say the salary is 8,000, right? And let's run that. Okay, we have an error. Cannot insert explicit value for identity column when identity insert. So because I've determined this as identity, so automatically it should automatically generate and make it a primary key. So I'm going to take this out, right? Let's try to run that again, see if it works. There are more columns, then I'll just take out the employee ID itself because it's primary key. The database will itself assign a value to it. Let's run it again. It says one row affected. So now let's select from the employee again. Let's see if the data has been input. So we have it there. You see it automatically assign one to Mary. And if we create another one, let's call this James. Let's call this Williams. 5,000. If we run that, notice that I didn't even put the employee ID there. The database is taking care of that itself. So that's the duty of this identity. I'm telling it start from 1 and then automatically increments by 1. So the next one is automatically insert 2 there. Let's run this and see. Row affected. Then let's select again. You see it automatically insert 2 there. And if I keep adding again and again and again and again, Wellington, let's give that 9,000. Insert, and if I select again, right? So what if I want to update this James to Jimmy? How do I do that? Right? So let's try something else. We'll just do update employee and set first name is equals to Jimmy, right? Where employee ID is equals to 2. So I'm telling the database to update the employee table, and when it gets to the employee table, set the first name to Jimmy. How do I know which first name? Where the employee ID is 2. So that's the index. It comes to the place where the employee ID is 2, and it sets the first name to Jimmy from James, right? If I run that, let's see what we have. Row affected. Now let's go back to select employee. The first name has been changed to Jimmy, right? So if I also want to delete, let's assume I want to delete the Wally one, I can just do delete from employee where employee ID is equals to 3, right? So let's run that. One row affected. If I select all again, the number 3 is gone. Now, when we are using the delete keyword, it's very important to use the where keyword. Otherwise, it will just delete the whole table, and we don't want that, right? So these are the basic, queries language that you need to know in a database. There are some more explicit, there are some more advanced query languages like TSQL and even joining and all that, but we'll eventually get to that. Until then, you should play with all of these, and we'll see you in the next tutorial, and we'll even talk about entity framework and how to connect this database to a C# application and make it a fully functional web application. Talk to you soon, and see you in the next video. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Thank you.